Hello, welcome to the channel that aims to bring some light to games left in the dark. This is From the Void. Hey, season's greetings everyone. Hope you're having a terrific December as the festivities are approaching. Hope you are staying with family and loved ones as much as possible this season. It's the end of the year, and what a year it has been. For me in particular, 2021 has been the start of a new career. I am serious about this YouTube thing, as I am finding much enjoyment in making videos about games, especially when I focus on the lesser known ones. Like today, I have truly found my passion professionally. I'm really hopeful that I can keep doing this, and for that I need your help, and that's why I'm starting the video this way. Unfortunately, the algorithm on YouTube favors channels that are already established. It's all about how many instant views an upload can get. If it doesn't surpass certain thresholds right away, the video is forgotten by the algorithm. That's why having more subscribers and having them turning on all notices is so important. If you like my videos, I would really appreciate if you subscribe and hit the bell for all notices, because due to the limited exposure my uploads get on YouTube, even though I get a lot of comments from people saying that they like the content, my channel's growth is too slow. So I fear that if it doesn't pick up soon, I won't be able to hold on much longer. So please, and only if you like the content really, let the season spirit speak through you and click that subscribe there. Would that be such a terrible thing? To have one more little circle in your subscription list? It would mean the world to me and my family, truly. So alright, enough of that. Let's talk about the games of the year from the void. I have been an avid fan of gaming news sites and channels for over a decade now, and one thing that always bothers me is that when it comes to best of the year lists, we only see the AAA stuff that everybody already knows about. Don't get me wrong, I love the AAA stuff too, they deserve the praise, but what bothers me is that the non-AAA stuff is always left out, usually because game of the year lists are often only 5 or 10 entries long at best, and I truly believe that a game doesn't need to be AAA to be among the best. And guess what? Now I know why people shy away from making this. There are so many games that if you dabble outside of the obvious, you are diving into uncharted waters, and things will get complicated, trust me. I tried my best here in searching for the 21 most noteworthy indie games released this year, but I am sure that I will have missed out on a number of them. There are just so many indie games coming out nowadays. It's hundreds every week. Even with several people sifting through them to find the best ones, several will slip through the cracks. It's unavoidable. So if your favorite indie game is not here, I invite you to share on the description, and please don't be offended that I didn't include it. It's really an impossible task to know all the indie games that are released. By the way, let's quickly establish what I mean by indie here, cause this term has changed a lot. Indie should mean not attached to any publisher, but that's not true anymore. Publishers such as Annapurna, Devolver Digital, Team 17, Raw Fury, and many others specialize in funding smaller teams to fulfill their projects, and those are still seen as indie, and I don't have a problem with that. So the concept of indie here would be more inclined to non-AAA stuff made by huge teams, while at the same time not attached to a big publisher like Activision, EA, Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, and so on. Another thing is that I will be separating the list into 2 videos to make each easier to consume. This first part will feature 11 games from number 21 to 11. So let's go, here is part 1 of the best 21 indie games of 2021. Hope you enjoy. Starting off with something otherworldly, Genesis Noir. This game is something else, let me tell you. This is basically a point-and-click murder mystery solving game, or perhaps to prevent a murder. Yeah, look at this. Look at the murder scene here. This will allow me to illustrate what this very abstract game is all about. The murder scene itself is a metaphor for the Big Bang, as in how the universe was created, Big Bang. Yeah, pretty crazy. The victim is Miss Mass, a love interest, but she is involved with another man, a very vain and egotistical murderer man. He shot a bullet at her, but look, it has yet to reach his target. So while you go around gathering evidence like a detective, you're also trying to assemble a black hole capable of stopping the Big Bang and saving Miss Mass. Will it be successful, or will she die? Or will it become something else entirely? Well, play it to find out. This is a beautiful, artsy as 1950s style stunning game with a great soundtrack and just so many amazing scenes. This is a remarkable, trippy experience you're not likely to forget. It's available on Switch, Xbox One, Steam, Epic, Humble Store, and GOG. Next, and keeping the topic cosmic, Solar Ash. Okay, this one is probably one of the better known on the list because it's the second game from Heart Machine, the creators of Hyper Light Drifter, which by the way is one of my favorite indie games of all time. I love it. So I was expecting this title to be way better, not only the 20th best indie game of the year, which makes this entry kinda bittersweet to me. It's hard to pinpoint what went wrong here because in paper it sounds awesome. You are a void runner? I mean a void runner, come on, it even suits this channel very well. You enter a supermassive black hole called Ultra Void, again, void all over the place, and you go around skating on top of everything, bending gravity, while fighting off the sludge monsters and then facing the massive anomalies in epic encounters. Doing all those things is cool, but for the most part, the game is missing some oomph, you know? Missing a tighter battle system, better sound effects even. I don't know, it's hard to explain, but there is a lot of positives still, more than enough to justify this game's inclusion on the list. The boss encounters are thrilling as hell as you skate through on top of the boss in a kind of obstacle race against the clock, as you have to hit each of its weak points in succession before the boss becomes ultra hot and you have to start all over, and that will require very quick reflexes on your part. I like the boss fights, but I can also see people disliking them because having to retry multiple times can be frustrating. The exploration is another strong aspect in the game, especially in later levels, with stunning and bizarre locations highlighted by the neon color palette this game has that creates a very interesting otherworldly atmosphere. It's not a game for everyone, but if you like exploration and tough platforming, the great level design here will provide you a satisfying experience for sure. Solar Ash is available on PlayStation 4 and 5 as well as the Epic Store. Next is Minute of Islands. What a remarkable experience this is. It's a side-scroller adventure game with heavy focus on the narrative and the setting, both quite fascinating and the biggest reasons for you to play this game. You control Mo, this girl, tasked with keeping this archipelago of very small islands safe from the fungus spores that have spread and are devouring everything they infect, dead or alive. These spores are no joke. There is so much of it that they cluster and form thick yellow clouds capable of blocking the sunlight even. The scenarios are unbelievably detailed. Look at how much stuff they drew for each location. It makes it a joy both to look at as well as to explore them. And the cartoonish colorful graphics contrast heavily with some gruesome scenes, especially due to the fungus fungus sprouting from the corpses of several creatures. It is amazing how they can be horrifying and mesmerizing at the same time. The gameplay here will have you solving very light puzzles and even lighter platforming sections in order to reboot the protecting towers that can eradicate the spores floating around. These machines were created by the giants that reside underground, creatures shrouded in mystery, and as you visit each one of them, you get more lore and details about them. On the surface will be the remaining humans that chose to stay here despite the calamity that has ensued, even after most other inhabitants have already fled in an exodus. In the beginning, it seems like the whole focus of the game is in eradicating the blight and maybe discovering its reasons, but it becomes something else entirely. It's about the main character herself coping with the overwhelming task of protecting this whole place at a young age, while at the same time dealing with her social anxiety disorders. She will meet with the remaining members of her family, and it's very interesting to see the dynamic between them, mostly because this is a very well written narrative. Plus, the voiceover for the narration, as well as the eerie sound effects and music, go a long way in setting the tone of this game. It's a very moody vibe, all very interesting. If you like your games to be meaningful in story, character development, and message, Minute of Violence will be an enthralling experience through and through. It's available on the PlayStation 4, Switch, Xbox One, and Steam. Next up is action-packed Steel Assault. This game's structure is heavily inspired in Contra games. The stages are somewhat short but packed full of enemies and hazards of all sorts, culminating with an epic boss fight. But different from any Contra game, you don't have a gun. Instead, they decided to twist the formula real nice with the other inspiration, Castlevania. Your guy has a whip-type weapon that can be used in 8 directions, and it's actually amazing how well these two things go together in the game. Another highlight is the grappling hook, which you can also use in any of the 8 cardinal directions. This is a pretty cool feature of Steel Assault. You can grapple to most walls and floors and create a rope line to hang on to, and the game will force you to use this in many different and clever ways. They tuned the gameplay in Steel Assault really carefully to make this mix of Contra, Castlevania, and grappling hook feel seamless and fantastic. That's not to say that this game doesn't have its fair share of negative aspects. The story in Steel Assault is barely even there. In a few sections there are some cheap shots with enemy placement and behavior, but the main drawback is the length. The story in normal mode will last you less than 1 hour. You can go for the expert and arcade modes to increase this game's duration considerably, but only because you will be dying dozens if not hundreds of times. But I always say I'd much rather have a short but awesome game than a longer but less polished one. So Steel Assault in my book is a fantastic action game well worth playing. It got an 8 out of 10 in my review. You can check that out in the description, and it's available on Switch, Steam, and Humble Store. Now, Maquette. In terms of novelty, this one is one of the best puzzle games I've ever played. Basically, you have access to a maquette that represents the entire area you're in. You can place certain objects in it and they will magically appear in full scale in the quote-unquote real world. And it works the other way around too. If you place an object in the real world, you can pick it up in the maquette in a much smaller scale. This is quite interesting as a mechanism for puzzles that is explored in many different and mind-bending ways throughout the game. Maquette also succeeds in presenting an interesting and very relatable story about a young couple and their hardships in building a life together. The voiceover is outstanding and the music accompanying it makes for a rather emotional experience throughout. Maquette is a must-play puzzle game in my opinion. Highly recommended if you're into them. It's on the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5 and Steam. Next is Wolfstride. Wolfstride certainly brings some new fresh air into the RPG genre, plus it sports a very bold and stylish look. The black and white approach is certainly striking, and the character portraits and mechas are impressive. Wolfstride is all about mecha battles, and it's pretty cool as the battle system here is certainly a highlight. Very unique and simple in nature, while also providing a lot of room for strategy, as the game introduces all the mechanisms one by one. There are a few glaring drawbacks to this game, such as taking a real long time to get things going, a few grinding aspects in the side activities, and a problematic traversal system, but the main stuff in Wolfstride is overwhelmingly positive, including the character development and story, which are mature and very compelling. This game got a score of 8.1 when I reviewed it recently. It's available only for PCs on Steam, Epic, GOG, or Humble Store. Next is Super Mombo Quest. This is a colorful side-scroller that tries something very simple but very effective in the platforming genre: combos. Yeah, and it's pretty straightforward. Each of the Metroidvania-style screens will ask the player to complete one or two challenges while going through them. Most of them will have you killing enemies as fast as possible so not to allow the combo meter to deplete. This simply transforms the entire gameplay into something very engaging and fun, from the very beginning all the way to the end, and they made sure of that by adding unlockable abilities that will be required to traverse to the platforming sections as well as to defeat enemies. So if there is one thing that I can guarantee no matter what, is that this game is loads of fun. If you are looking for a fun platformer, this is it. I gave it an 8.2 in my recent review of it. You can check it out on the description. It's available on Switch, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Steam. Next is pixel art perfection, Flynn, Son of Crimson. How gorgeous is this game? Take a look. It's certainly one of the highlights of the year, and not just because of the graphics. This game does all the basics outstandingly well. Platforming is on point, including using the abilities you learn along the way. Combat is certainly the strongest aspect of the game, with loads of challenging enemies, bosses with interesting patterns, and Flynn can dish out some awesome moves with 3 different weapons to equip. The axe is powerful, slow, but staggers enemies quickly. The claws are quick and also cause a good amount of stagger, but the damage is lower, while the sword is more balanced for all 3 aspects. You can also conjure fire, ice, and lightning, all incredibly useful, and this is all made possible because of the great controls it has. Everything feels great. Finally, the world building is fascinating. There are loads of locations, cities, races, and stories to unfold here, not one of them feeling forced in. The world map is beautiful, dividing the game in dozens of long stages, all accompanied by a terrific soundtrack and well-made sound effects. And on top of that, they threw in a few twists. The major one, for sure, being the mounted sections. Later in the game, you unlock the Guardian Dex, who you can mount on, and this changes the gameplay considerably, as Dex is way more powerful and mobile than Flynn by himself. This is a pretty awesome game, no doubt one of the best action platformers of the year, not only among smaller titles. Do check it out. It's out on Switch, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Steam. Moving on to The Legend of Tianding. Look at this game. How much more personality a game can convey through graphics than this? I find the comic book style, coupled with the Taiwanese setting, just exquisite. And how many games you know take place in 1909 Taiwan? 0, that's how many. And it's based on a real story of Liao Tianding, and I don't know how much of the in-game events are true to the real story, but he's pretty much Taiwan's Robin Hood. But instead of archery, he's proficient in Kung Fu. This game is heavy on the story and talking to NPCs aspect. There is a lot of it. so it's better if you're interested in the story, which I found very cool, especially since the voiceover is all in Taiwanese, which is very interesting. But for sure, the best aspect of the game is the action. Tianding will learn several different abilities, and the game will require you to learn them well, especially his scarf ability. He can wrap enemies with it and steal their weapon. I usually don't like when you can take enemies' weapons, because they usually suck because it's often not a very well implemented feature. But in this game, it's one of the coolest things. He is masterful with every single melee weapon, changing his style of combat significantly, whether with extra damage, range, or speed, and he can even steal pistols, rifles, grenades, and rocket launchers. This feature in the game is fantastic, makes the combats really enjoyable, which is important because this is a tough game, especially in boss fights. No walk in the park at all. The stages are rather long and full of secrets, so the exploration factor is also a positive. I feel like no one has discovered this game yet, which is a real shame. Check it out if you like unique side-scroller action games. The Legend of Tianding is available on Switch, Steam, and Epic Store. Now, a truly endearing game, Greak Memories of Azur. What a precious game this is, not just because of the captivating graphics, but because this is a masterfully crafted adventure, like few games can truly call themselves. Don't let the fact that it's a side-scroller fool you into thinking that this is a straightforward game. They give you a lot of freedom in deciding where to go, and there will always be a reward waiting for you. Lots of optional items to find and side quests to complete. This is a game that takes itself seriously in a very positive way too. It's well written both in narrative as well as character interactions, which results in a charismatic cast, especially the three main characters. And this is one of the most endearing aspects of the game. From the very beginning, it becomes apparent that you will find the main character Greek's siblings. They are three in total: Greak, Adara, and Rydell. I found this so heartwarming to have a family as the three party members. Now, pay attention to this, cause it may seem like a regular action game feature, but it's not. It's actually something that sets this game apart. In most other games, once you switch characters, one disappears while the other takes its place, right? Yeah, that's not the case at all in Greak. They are all present physically at all times. They cannot disappear. Again, this game takes itself super seriously. Instead, you'll have to manage all three of them at all times. You can press a button to have the other two characters mimic the one you're using, and there is a button to have them group together, while you can switch between them freely. This is a demanding mechanism and kind of confusing to learn, and will probably put off some people, but trust me, they provide enough gameplay tools to make this work, and once you get it, it's beyond cool and satisfying to manage the entire party and defeat a boss, for instance. Each sibling has different perks that are used both in combat as well as exploration and puzzle solving. Greek is the smallest, he has a sword and a bow, he is fast and can crawl into tiny spaces. Adara has projectile arcane magic as her weapon. She also floats, is a terrific swimmer, and has low health. Rydell is the older brother and he's a knight. He cannot swim, is a bit slower, but is terrific in melee combat and has a hookshot and a shield. And take a look, this is the sort of thing you'll be doing in this game, see? Rydell is using his shield to protect the other two. I mean, is it just me or isn't this the coolest thing ever? Even though it's a very simple idea, there is such a high sense of companionship and adventure in this game that it's hard to deny that the experience becomes priceless. I love this game. Try it out if you like captivating adventures and don't mind high learning curves for the controls, because this one is worth it. Greak Memories of Azur is available on PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One and Series, Switch, Steam, Humble Store, and GOG. And to close off this first part, another very endearing game. This is OMNO. What a splendid game. The world of OMNO is the most awe-inspiring thing ever. So many creatures to find and interact with, and lush vast environments to explore with pretty much no pop-in in the draw distance, which was impressive for such expansive environments. The color palette they used is really enjoyable, and the music and sound effects are subtle and emotional, resulting in a great package for the presentation. 10 out of 10. And the gameplay doesn't lag behind at all. This is a 3D platformer with several unique and pretty awesome mechanics that go a long way in keeping you amazed throughout the whole experience. You control the last of the staff bearers, who can use his staff in several different ways to traverse the environment, including surfing on it, floating with it, and zipline teleporting it. The animations for sure are spectacular, and they are all a joy to make use of, not only to explore but also to solve puzzles. This game has no combat. It's all about finding the objects to open the next area and cataloging the creatures, while optionally interacting with them, which I highly recommend doing, because it's the purest, most endearing thing ever. This is a truly heartwarming game, full of clever puzzles and strikingly well done in the presentation, which is beyond amazing because this game was made by a solo developer, Jonas Monk. Kudos to him. This is spectacular. How did he manage to do this alone? I will never know. OMNO is available on PlayStation 4, Switch, Xbox One, Steam, and Epic Store. And that's it for the first part of the list. Very soon I'll be releasing the second one, should be in less than a week, so be sure to stay tuned for that, cause the top 10 is filled with amazing games, many of which few people are talking about. Again, I really appreciate if you could subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. I really appreciate each one of you who are already doing that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.